In this lesson, you will learn how to weight requirements in Tricentis Tosca. Once the requirements are defined and structured, we will move on to weighting each requirement on all levels. The weighting process is meant to give an indication of which requirements have the greatest level of risk associated with a failure of the functionality. Tricentis recommends that you always begin by testing those functionalities with the highest business risk. There are two ways to weight the requirements in Tosca: basic weighting and complex weighting. So basic weighting. To begin with basic weighting, ensure that the weight column is visible in the requirements section. You will see that the default weight for each requirement is 1, which means that all requirements are weighted equally. Simple weighting allows you to assign values to each requirement in your requirements set. They can then be compared to all other requirements on the same level, as well as the requirement set as a whole. These values are linear. They can contain any value between 0 and 10, 10 being the highest weight. Best practice is to use a simple scale from 1 to 5. The best way to do this is to close all sub-requirements and begin on the highest level. Assign the values next to the respective requirement, 1 being the lowest weight and 5 being the highest weight. You can then expand each requirement and enter the values for the leaf requirements underneath. The highest level requirements can show us which area to begin looking at for testing, and the leaf requirements will indicate exactly which requirement to focus on. In the assessment of requirements, a linear scale may not provide you with distinctive values, or it may be too difficult to distinguish between a simple weight of 3 or 4. To overcome this, Tosca offers a more sophisticated risk weighting methodology, which uses 2 values related to the business: the potential financial loss associated with the failure of a requirement, also called the damage class, and how heavily a function is used in the application, also called the frequency class. Each of these is a column in the requirements section and can be added using the column chooser. Each requirement can be assigned both a frequency class and a damage class. For frequency class, you would ask the question, how often is this functionality used? For damage class, you would ask the question, how much financial damage would we incur if this functionality failed? It is important to remember, however, that these numbers are simply estimations in comparisons to the other requirements. Both can be assigned a value in the range of 0 to 10, similar to the basic weighting column. Again, best practice is to use a range of 1, being the lowest level of financial damage risk or the least frequently used functionality, to 5, being the highest level of financial risk or the most frequently used functionality. This weight is calculated as an exponential function using a base value of 2. So the formula would be 2 to the power of frequency class multiplied by 2 to the power of the damage class. When you add the frequency class and the damage class, you will see that the weight is calculated automatically by Tosca according to this formula. You can manually override the weight if necessary. You can also adjust the base values on the Properties tab for the requirements set. Using an exponential weighting system allows for a wider and more clear spread between requirements and helps to support the decision-making when determining which requirement to begin testing. As with simple weighting, we will begin with the highest level requirements first and then expand and weight the leaf requirements. With the requirements all weighted, we can now compare the requirements against other requirements in the same level or with the overall requirements set. To do this, ensure that the columns contribution percentage and relative weight percentage are visible using the column chooser. The column contribution percentage allows you to compare over the whole requirement set. This shows the relative percentage of risk coverage for each requirement in a requirement set according to its and its parents' weights. Values in the column contribution percentage are multiplied with their parent in order to show their contribution in comparison to the whole set. The column relative weight shows the calculated weight in percentage compared on the same level. Values for elements on the same level always sum up to 100 for relative weight, as they are compared to each other. As mentioned before, other sections in Tosca can be linked to the requirements section for a better overview of the entire project. Test sheets in test case design will be linked to requirements, which we will cover later in this course. Test cases are linked to requirements, and execution lists are linked to requirement sets. The column execution state shows the result of the executed test cases, taking the risk into account, leading to a risk-based coverage statement. This will be indicated by an exclamation mark next to the requirements set. To update, select the relevant requirements set and either press F6 or click the button Update Outdated Values in the ribbon. To change the setting in Tosca 10.3 and later, go to Project, Settings, Commander, General and Advanced. The setting, called Auto Calculate Requirements, will be set to off. Selecting On will enable the auto update as it was in previous versions.